Welcome to Discussions with the Writer Fred, right here at Black Video News in San Antonio, Texas. As you all know, I hope you know that we just celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. He would have been 90 years old on the 15th if he hadn't been assassinated by a white killer. And here in San Antonio, we have probably the biggest and best salute to Martin Luther King on the third Monday in January with a march and then speakers and just a great celebration. And all over the world, they know what we do. So I thought today for my program, it would be good to discuss Dr. Martin Luther King. And I have with me here today two gentlemen who are very, very knowledgeable and adept about talking about Dr. King. I have Mario Salas, who has been commissioner for the Tricentennial Commission here, the 300-year anniversary of San Antonio. He's also a commissioner for the Bexar County Historical Society and a former member of the San Antonio City Council. But he's got to me, a better history. After the after the United States Congress passed the Martin Luther King National Holiday Bill, Mario and a few others went to work to make sure the state of Texas also adopted the holiday. And when we go after our break, Mario, I'd like to come back and maybe spend a few minutes you talking about how you all got that done.
Perfect.
I also have my brother Aundar here. He's been with us before. Welcome back, my brother.
Well, thank you,
Glad
my
to have
brother.
you back.
Yes, sir.
By the way, that was a great program you had last week at the Carver Library.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you.
That young girl stays on my mind.
Yes.
That beautiful young sister who got up and said, "I'm proud to be African."
Yes.
And we have to really follow up with her, I think, and make sure we give her the positive reinforcement she needs.
Yes.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, she's scheduled to come out for our next program, Black History for Children book exhibit. She's going to be one of our guest readers. So
that's
she's gonna read to the
fantastic.
children.
Yeah. When's that going to be? You want to tell
That's
our
going to
viewers?
be on February the 9th. It's going to be at the Carver Library. It's from 11 to 1. So it's an opportunity to bring the children out to hear stories about Black history, and to also we're going to be sharing some books with some of the children that come out.
You know, we talk about, and Brother Aundar, before we went on the air, had a long discussion. We have to do this.
Yes.
We have, all you mothers out there, you need to bring your children out to that program and learn about some of the books that are available about us.
Yes.
By us, about us. And
That's
that's going to be the big mantra going into the next decade. About us, by us.
I agree. Yes, sir.
And so with that in mind, let's get to about us, by us, about Dr. Martin Luther King. How do we, it's been over 50 years now, I think, since his assassination. How do we assess his value to us in our culture? What did he do? And how positive was he? And how successful has he been? You want to start, Brother Aundar?
Well, you know, first, when I look at the life of Dr. King, I speak with great admiration for Dr. King. But I think how I look at Dr. King is first I look at the man, and then I look at the plan. And when I look at the man, Dr. King, I see a man who's truly brilliant, truly courageous. You know, he said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And he referred to himself as a drum major for justice.
Yeah, he did. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
And he used to say that truth crushed the earth will rise again. And he made the point that he spoke the truth. And I just had great admiration for what he gave us as a man, because I think he gave America an example of a man who had love and a determination, courage, and had a vision of a better world.
For everybody.
Yes. For
Specifically
everybody.
for us, but for everybody.
Yes, it was, I mean, the vision was great.
Yes.
Because he spoke of love. And, you know, he used to say that everybody can be great because anybody can serve, because all we need is a heart and soul generated by love. So the man, truly, I appreciate and have a great deal of respect for. I look at the plan. And if the plan, and I put it this way, if the plan is around reaching equality and taking a path of integration, I asked, what did it reveal? And I think, there's a saying that even when, long as someone does something in a right spirit, even if it appears go wrong, it was right because we learn from it.
Okay.
And I saw in the life of Dr. King where he was trying to get us towards this thing of integration, which was a great vision. But I also saw that it revealed something to all of us that we're going to have to learn as a lesson from history. So I look at the man in the plan, and we're going to share the.
Go ahead, Mario.
Well, you have to talk about Martin Luther King's legacy, obviously, and the fact he was very courageous. And a lot of things that I think have gone over people's heads to some degree. And at times, his belief in nonviolence was not something I believed in. It's not something that others believed in, but accepted it. We accepted it because that vision of nonviolence is really a great vision. To be able to win a victory without having to pick up a gun, and he did, is something to be said about that. But the one thing that people never probably think about is Martin Luther King was not opposed to self-defense. He often told his bodyguards that. He would often have discussions with them about, you guys ought not be carrying guns, but I understand. So he had also the understanding that people have a right to protect themselves, that human life is valuable enough to where, despite his belief in nonviolence, which is very strong, he understood the bottom line is protection. You still must protect yourself. So when he would have these arguments with some of his bodyguards and lieutenants and stuff, they would never want to criticize his nonviolence because basically he was saying, I understand why you're carrying a gun. It's all right, but I won't. Okay, and then his beautiful position on the Vietnam War. There's a story I think that's told in one of the books. I can't remember who, it might have been by Taylor Branch or somebody, but one of the books tells a story of how Stokely Carmichael and him were having a discussion right before he was about to give a sermon. And Martin Luther King asked Stokely, and Stokely was not in favor of ever being beaten again, so Stokely was already going down a different road. Yeah. But Stokely said, what are you doing today? Basically, I'm paraphrasing, Martin Luther King said, well, it's Sunday, I'm going to give my sermon, and I'm inviting you to make sure you come. And Carmichael's response was, for what, man? It's the same sermon. I done heard them all. What's going to be different about this sermon? And Dr. King's reply was, I'm going to oppose the Vietnam War. That's right. And Stokely Carmichael's response was, I'll be on the front row. Because he had been pressuring Dr. King to oppose that war for a very long time. And Dr. King, because, brilliant people often take time to understand what they're doing before they do it. That's right. Right? A lot of us don't do that. Sometimes I don't do that. But King took his time, and then he came, I think, to the correct conclusion about that war was a no good war.
He lost a lot of following, as you know.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about it? And plus, he lost the support of Lyndon Johnson when he came out against the Vietnam War. And Lyndon Johnson was very, very instrumental in getting the Civil Rights Bill and the Voting Rights Bill passed. Lyndon felt very betrayed by Martin Luther King when he came out against the war. But I think King was being consistent with his philosophy of nonviolence.
Yeah, he had to be. He had to be, despite the fact that he needed Johnson for that bill. But by the same token, sometimes you can't sacrifice your principles.
And that's a great point, because I believe it was the principles that he stood upon that was so significant. And that's why I said earlier, him being so honest. To me, he came across as a man who really studied what was going on and came to an honest, first of all, stood on certain principles. And then he took an honest position about what really is going to best bring about the world that we want to live in. Yeah. And I think when he opposed the Vietnam War, and then even down later on, and this is very interesting because I had read this article in one of the papers, and they talked about something he shared with Harry Belafonte. And he had shared with him that he thought that he may have been integrating his people into a burning house. Now, people may take that the wrong way, but listen, because understand that Dr. King looked at things in an honest way, and he was asking, is this going to get us to where we are trying to get to? If we're trying to get to freedom, justice, and equality, is this going to help us get there? Now, when he said that, also you go back to his last speech in Memphis when he talked about, in that speech,
We'll get to the promised land.
yeah, we get to the promised land, but he also laid out a little plan to get to the promised land in the sense that we should support each other. We should have a buy-in. We should have a sit-in in supporting Black businesses. And we should be more concerned about what we have going on within our community. And I think Dr. King, to me, really came across as a man who was determined to try to find a pathway to create the good world that we want to live in. And he was open to making changes and adjusting his ideas, but he always stood upon the principle that it has to be about love and being courageous and determined to create a better world.
Do you think at the end, well, of course, Malcolm dies in 65. He's assassinated in 65, and King in 68. But do you think before Malcolm is assassinated, the two are coming closer together in terms of the way they looked at the world and the struggle?
As many good friends as I have in the Nation of Islam, I always do point out to them, Malcolm left the Nation of Islam because his philosophy changed. It changed from being very focused into one particular ideology, mainly a religious ideology, to becoming a very wide international point of view. So when he made that change, I think that probably would have brought him closer to King.
To King.
Yeah. Even though he never gave up the idea of militant self-defense. So that stayed with him. So he he didn't push nonviolence like Dr. King would, but they could still see it and I think they would have saw it as a way to work together. One thing I like to look at in terms of an example of that is Nelson Mandela's philosophy at the time when the struggle against apartheid was going on. And the African National Congress had a beautiful slogan. And that slogan was that you had to have mass protest. It had to be as much as possible nonviolent, but you also had to have an armed struggle. And so in the South African case, so he would always say between the anvil, and you look at it like an anvil that you beat metal with, and this was his quote, between the anvil of mass action and the hammer of armed struggle, we will defeat the South African regime. So Mandela is an interesting person because he goes in and out of nonviolence in some cases, then back to armed struggle, then back to nonviolent. He knew how to flip in and out of that. And I don't know, Martin Luther King may have understood the importance of that at one time, because whatever criticisms you could lay on the Panthers for carrying out mainly armed ideas, they made Martin Luther King's job easier. They did. Malcolm made Martin Luther King's job
He really did,
easier.
because Martin appeared to be
He won't negotiate with you.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So the white supremacists, the power structure, would rather go talk to Martin than they would talk to Malcolm.
Yeah, definitely.
But you see, if there's some awareness on the part of both leaders, and I think it would have got to that point.
I think so too.
Where I ain't going to criticize you, you don't criticize
Right.
me.
I think
We
they're
can
getting
compliment it. You keep doing what you're doing, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and we'll get there.
And that would have been a heck of a combination coming together.
Yeah, I thought it
Malcolm
was.
and Martin, for
I
sure.
thought it was. I thought it was going to go somewhere too.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a break here, but when we come back, Mario, could you take a couple minutes and just tell our viewers around the world how you all were able to make King's birthday a state holiday, and it was already a national holiday? And we'll be right back with you.
40% of food in America is never eaten.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
Do you want to retire like a champ? Just like legendary basketball star Uncle Drew?
Don't do him like that, Uncle Drew!
You're already acing the game. You've got your dream ride.
Don't be slamming my door.
Sorry about that.
You just did the same.
Gotta get the boys.
Your dream vacation and your dream team. And now you can make your retirement just as legendary.
I get buckets.
Get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
Nothing to do this week? Don't miss another event. Go to blacksinsanantonio.com for our event calendar. The home of the largest business directory in San Antonio with an African American focus. Sign up today for our weekly e-blast and text message alerts. Help us make this a better community. Connect, empower, grow.
Please join me as I host this year's Black Worship Clergy Hall of Fame dinner, Monday, February 18th at the Antioch Sports Complex. Come experience an evening of fun, fellowship, and food as we induct Pastor Robert P. Forte Sr., pastor of the Mount Gilead Baptist Church, and Pastor Ray D. Brown, pastor of the Resurrection Baptist Church. I look forward to seeing you there. Pastor Kevin Nelson, be blessed.
Welcome back to Discussions with the Writer Fred, right here in Black Video News in good old San Antonio, Texas, where we have one heck of a march in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King coming up this Monday. And the person responsible, one of the people responsible for that march and for this state, I'm talking about the whole state, actually celebrating Dr. King's birthday was Mario Salas. Mario,
Well, at least some of it.
would you tell our viewers what you all did?
I'll do it as quick as I can. For years and years and years, people of goodwill would go to Austin to try to get the state to honor King. By the time 1988, 89 rolled around, there were only 3 states left in the entire country that wouldn't honor Dr. King. That was Vermont, Arizona, and Texas. And so we had a meeting one day. I was a member of a group called Frontline 2000, and we had a meeting one day, and a guy by the name of Rick Green called the meeting, and he tells me on the phone before I ever get to the meeting, I know how we're going to get the state to honor Dr. King. And I go, okay, I don't feel like going to jail right now. So what do you have in mind? And he said, no, we ain't about to go to jail. That's going to be legal. So we get to the house. There's a bunch of us gathered at the house there. And he says, I said, okay, what's the plan? He says, well, we're going to take away their football. And yeah, that's what I did. I said, huh? I said, you mean we're going to run out in the field in a Dallas football game and grab the ball and keep on going? He said, no. You haven't read the paper lately, Salas. And I said, okay, critique accepted. What is in the paper? He said that Arizona, the National Football League, had told Arizona they're not going to play any Super Bowls in Arizona as long as King is not honored by that state. And here we're talking state holiday as opposed to federal holiday. So that's what they said, and they meant it. Gene Upshaw, who was the president of the Players Association at the time, I think he was originally probably Oakland Raider, I think. He agreed with that, and then Rick Green was able to get the speaker of the, Paul Tagliabue, the commissioner of the NFL at the time, on the phone and tell him, if you allow Texas to have a Super Bowl, because this was the part of the newspaper I hadn't paid attention to, Houston had a bid in for a Super Bowl. And in those days, they don't do it, they do it differently now, but in those days you had to put in a bid this is what we're going to do. This hotels are going to cost this, la 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 la. And so Rick told Paul Tagliabue, I'm sitting there listening to him. We're going to sue you if you have any kind of football Super Bowl game here in Texas, as long as Texas does not honor Dr. King. So I don't know. A very short period of time later, we get a call from the Texas Speaker of the House. Gib Lewis was his name at the time.
Yeah.
And the speaker says, well, I want to talk to y'all about what's going on, because we had already promised to sue. We had made threats to sue, and as well as to initiate boycotts against Texas. Don't come to Texas. Don't buy nothing in Texas. Okay. So the Gib Lewis called us. We find out from former State Rep Karen Conley that the bill always passes the Senate. 31 state senators, it always passes. Probably by 31 votes most often, 29, 30 votes at the least. But when it gets to the House, or if it initiates in the House, the bill is put in the bottom of the stack.
It doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, and if you know anything about Texas politics, this House only meets for 140 days, and then it's over. And if your bill gets in the bottom of the stack, then there's not enough time for it to come back up.
And also for 2 years.
Yeah, it's dead for 2 years.
Yeah.
So good point. And so we wanted to know at that point, well, who's the person that's putting the bill on the bottom of the stack? So Karen tells us, Karen Conley says, was Pete Laney. He later becomes the Speaker of the House. So we know he has ambitions in his mind. So I said, okay, we're going to go talk to the Speaker of the House, Gib Lewis. And the meeting is arranged in Austin. There's all kinds of cameras there. Everybody in the world is there. And on the way up there, we're talking to each other. We say, we appreciate what the NAACP did. Reverend Kelly's went to Austin all the time. They would take busloads of people. They would get up there and try their best to convince the state, the House, to pass a Martin Luther King bill. Well, in their opinion, you can bring out how many, and even one of them said that, we don't care how many people you bring, we ain't gonna do it. And so Rick's idea was, that ain't gonna work. Protest, busloads of people, that ain't gonna work, so we gotta try something different. So I said, okay, take the football away. He goes, yeah, that's what I mean. They won't honor King. We're going to do everything in our power to stop any Super Bowl from ever being played here. Wow. We get to the speakers of the House's office. We get to his office. We go in. I think Ron Wilson, who's a state rep out of Houston, he's there. A bunch of different people are there from different cities. So we go in. We're carrying the ball. I'm the spokesperson for that particular event. And I said, well, we're here to discuss why Texas doesn't have Martin Luther King State holiday. And we're also here to tell you there ain't going to be any football games by the NFL as far as Super Bowl goes in this state until we fix this. Now, Mr. Lewis, the reason why this bill never passes is because they keep putting it on the bottom of the stack. Your appointee to that committee is Pete Laney. He's the one that keeps putting it on in the bottom of the stack. So this meeting, 15 minutes long, Fred. 15 minutes. And the Speaker of the House, after I get through ranting and raving like I do, he says, well, and this, I remember his words pretty clearly. He says, well, around 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, that bill will be out of committee. It was in the calendars committee. It'll be out of committee, and it'll be up for a vote that afternoon.
Wow.
Thank you all for coming. Y'all have a nice day. He wouldn't talk about nothing. He didn't want to say nothing else. But we didn't care about that. That's all we came for.
Right, yeah.
So we get back to San Antonio, and I get a call from Governor Ann Richards' office from her secretary. And she's in shock. She says, how in the world did you get the Speaker of the House to agree to get that bill out of committee? And so I couldn't help but make a joke for it. They said, we threatened to take away their football. She did what? She did the same thing. What? I said, I'll have to tell you about the whole story about that later. But unfortunately, or fortunately, and more fortunately, shamefully, we had to threaten to take away a football game to get a Martin Luther King State holiday.
Yeah, that is.
Isn't that wild?
But Rick got it done.
Rick was right. His point was, forget what strategy looks like. Let's get the holiday. So I learned something about sometimes you have to carry on a struggle against something you may not necessarily agree with. But you have to support it because it'll get you where you need to go.
Yes,
that's fantastic.
That is.
And so, viewers, we have to all congratulate and thank Mario for having a King holiday, state holiday. The national holidays are always here, but having a state holiday, and as a result, having a tremendous march every year. Thank you, Mario.
Well,
we appreciate that.
Appreciate it, and I'll do it again in a heartbeat. and Rick is now deceased.
Right.
But posthumously, I want to thank
him also
for that idea.
Yeah, thank you. Brother Aundar, do you think any other approach would have worked other than the peaceful, nonviolent approach in the South at the time?
No,
And then
I mean,
violence that-
in all honesty, no.
So you think that was the right approach?
Well, and I'm saying peaceful, nonviolent protests, because one, for many different reasons, but we are ill prepared for any armed struggle.
Yeah.
So we got to be realistic.
Mhm.
You have to go to war with what you have
to fight the
to
war.
fight
Yeah.
the war.
Yeah.
So we know in the system that we're living in here in America, there's supposed to be this democratic system where you have the vote,
Right.
and you have this process to challenge the vote or push a vote a certain way.
Mhm.
And I think we used what was available to us. Now, my question sometimes is asked, how far is that going to take us to get to where we really want to go?
Yeah.
You know, because what Mr. Mario just shared with us, I just thought about, you know, you was really threatening their economics. Because if you're talking about the Super Bowl is not going to be here, Houston is not going to be happy because they're going to lose some money.
A lot of money.
So
Exactly.
so the idea, you threaten certain things or you challenge certain things, but that was the same thing in the Montgomery bus boycott. They started pushing on that money, and in the cities. So what we started to realize, and I think this is one of the things that Dr. King was really understanding, is that, okay, you withhold your economic vote until somebody vote the way you need them to vote to move forward your plan or the betterment of the society. So no, going back to your original question, no. Peaceful protest was appropriate and is appropriate. Now, but I also realized that though this is not our state of being here, but there are places, even, I understand even when Dr. King, of course, was a great follower of Gandhi. But you know, in India, they had a facet of their movement that was prepared to do things beyond just,
beyond that, that's right.
yeah, just to sit back and wait for somebody to make a difference. See, and I think what we have to realize is that we have to have everything on the table and use our minds and our strategy. And I think that was a great story, what Mr. Rick Green did to bring about that strategy and to realize that we got to sit down. One thing, we got to sit at the table and talk to each other and strategize and then come up with a plan and join forces and do it together.
Well, and the big joke after that was, I said, wow, we take away the football, and that's the economics. The big joke amongst us was, wow, I wonder what we could get if we threatened to take away their beer at the football game. But we'd get anything at that point. But I pretty much agree with you. The strategy that would work would be the nonviolent strategy. But there are times when that other strategy had a really profound effect that made the hand of King, made it easier for him to negotiate because there were groups of people who said, I don't feel like waiting any longer, and would carry on a more armed kind of a conflict.
And that brings me around to my question for you, Mario. In your younger day, your radical day, you associated with the Panthers, Black
That's
Panthers.
right. Yeah, it was. We had a chapter that was half SNCC and half Panther. It was the only one in the country. And as a matter of fact, it was the last chapter in the entire country of Panther and SNCC. It was the last one. 1976 is when it finally disbanded. I was in, Landon Williams, who was on the executive committee of the Black Panther Party, called me one day and he goes, his interpretation of what we were, he said, you all were a hybrid organization. I go, yeah, that's right.
Hybrid, yeah.
Yeah, we were two different groups at one time. And he said, and we didn't get the charter to be an official Black Panther Party because we had a fallout with Huey Newton. But after the fact, posthumously or in retrospect, their central committee, because they have the alumni of the original Black Panther Party, they actually met and voted that San Antonio had a Black Panther Party chapter. So we were all proud and happy about that. That was back in 1990. So we were all proud and happy about that. But the Panthers carried on the idea of armed struggle at certain times, certain places. Not always was it applicable, but sometimes it was. So militant self-defense was something that never left the Panther ideology. And that was to defend yourself against racist police, defend yourself against Klansmen, defend yourself, and if need be, take it to them. But that luckily didn't happen very often.
Which brings me to my last question here. Could King's approach have worked in the North? In other words,
Oh, that's a good question.
yeah, could it have worked in the North where the thinking of blacks was not to be passive?
You know what, Fred, that's a great, and I'll tell you why it's a great question. My wife is from Chicago, and I never forget what she said when we were talking about that very thing. She said, oh, King was really good down in the South. We went to Chicago, we had no idea the power of racism in the North. And then the Memphis strike and all of that. But that's a great question because it's a different ballgame.
It is.
The entrenchment of white supremacy in the North.
And blacks in the North would not have taken, you couldn't have taught them to be passive. You call somebody the N-word up north, they're going to whoop your butt, or they're going to try to whip your butt. And I can just recall, I raised the question because I was raised in Michigan. And when we're sitting at home watching what they're doing in the South, we said, what the hell? You know? I can actually remember when Emmett Till was killed. Blacks at the junior high school, Central Junior High School, looking for white boys to whip. And so it was a different mindset, I think, with black people up north.
And that's what I was going to say. I think it was the mentality. It was different. Blacks in the South, the mentality was different for blacks in the North, because in the North we had experienced a certain level of freedom and free thinking and self-determination.
Right.
And so there were certain things that was not going to be accepted. And there was going to be certain approaches where, look here, we're not going to peacefully accept this. We're going to fight back or defend ourselves. So I think it was just the mentality. So, of course, as you mentioned, Dr. King going to Chicago, it kind of, I think, exposed that. Yes.
It did, didn't it?
Woke him up and like, oh my God.
Don't you think that's when he started to move away from the passive, nonviolent approach? When he went to Chicago.
Thinking about it. He was thinking about it. Just historically speaking, Chicago, the northern cities, many of the northern cities had slavery, but it was domestic slavery for the most part.
Yes,
definitely. And like Malcolm used to say, house slaves are treated a little bit better than the slaves in the field. You go to the South, the majority of the black population is slave, what they call field slaves. Okay? So that had somewhat to do with a little bit more of integrity of blacks in the North, because it's like, I ain't putting up with that. I didn't put up with that from my master. But in the South, could you ever say that?
No, you couldn't.
You'd be killed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a little bit of some historical reason for that. You know.
Let's take a minute each and wrap it up about King. Your feelings about King now 51 years later. Mario, you want to go first?
Well, we've got a march here, and it's one of the biggest in the country, and we ought to be very proud of that. Somebody asked me one day, how did this wind up being one of the biggest marches in the country? I said, well, a lot of different reasons. One that always kind of clicks in my mind is a lot of the civil rights stuff that took place in the Deep South, it passed by here. It just barely talked about.
Right.
It didn't happen to the same degree. The level of oppression was bad.
But it wasn't quite as bad.
But it wasn't as overt. A little bit more hidden, subvert. So we have this huge march, and we're honoring King, and he ought to be continued to be honored as long as we possibly can do that, because what he did changed the course of history completely.
Absolutely.
And it changed the course of history, not just for black folks, but for brown folks, for Native Americans, for women, for everybody. And we have to live that legacy, and any and everywhere we see injustice, the attempt to rejuvenate injustice, we need to stand upon his shoulders and continue that fight.
Great. Okay.
Excellent.
Brother?
No, I just want to say I think we definitely should continue to honor Dr. King and his great legacy. And I think many times the best way to honor someone is to read their words, hear what they said, and look at the things they were able to accomplish, and learn from their success, and even learn from whatever failures in the struggle. And I'm saying that to say, I think Dr. King has given us a great example of some of the strategies which we can use to continue to bring about the kind of world that we're looking to live in. If the goal is freedom, justice, and equality, I think what Dr. King was laying out is a good strategy in the sense that some of those we move. It's like getting out on the football field. You're moving down the field a little further. You haven't scored a touchdown,
Not there yet.
but you're getting down the field.
Yeah.
And I think in honoring Dr. King, I think we need to recognize that Dr. King, being a great, courageous, loving man he was and is, that we need to follow his example. But at the same time, we need to learn and continue to, and say this. Dr. King said one thing I think definitely apply, and that is to find a way to continue to support our community businesses and develop economically within our community.
Right.
And I think we need to follow that, because he was saying that at that last speech in Memphis. So we got a lot to learn about Dr. King that we still don't know. And I think it's important that we as a community and as a people learn more than just maybe about, I have a dream, because he had a vision and a plan for something greater than just a dream.
Absolutely. I want to thank you, brothers, for coming on Discussions with the Writer Fred.
I want to thank you, Fred, for having us.
Yeah, thank y'all. I just want to thank both of y'all. I'm honored to sit here with y'all, because y'all are doing, I know Mario and Mr. Williams, y'all are doing some great work here.
Well, thank
and I
you.
think the community really has to really appreciate you, what you're doing.
We hope so.
Yeah,
We'll keep on
well,
going.
yeah,
even
I know
now.
that's right. No matter what.
Well, I think one thing is very clear to our viewers is that we have some great black minds. And one thing we can do is tell our story, our way, all the time.